Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm Steve Vaccaro, NYCC's Programs Director. And joining us is Brendt Barbur, the founding director of the Bicycle Film Festival. Brendt is going to unmute himself. I gave him a quick tutorial on the use of Zoom before we started.
Hi, everybody.
I see that people are filing in from the waiting room, virtually, so to speak. So we're going to give it a few minutes to make sure everyone's in, and then we can start the program. I'll start out with mea culpa. My apologies for the cessation in the programming. I started out strong. I delivered weekly programming via Zoom webinar for the club when the lockdown order first hit. I hope it was entertaining, and we had some great talks. Mark Simkin has very graciously figured out how to take the recordings of those webinars, which include Ian Walker, Aisha McGowan, the authors of the War on Cars podcast, and a fourth podcast that a fourth guest who I can't quite recall, and they're going to be up on the website. So if you missed those webinars back in March and early April, then I will urge you to tune in, and they're going to be available on our website. People who saw them enjoyed them, and I recommend them to you. Then there was a delay. I was sick for a good part of that time, and then trying to catch up with the rest of it. But I'm back, and we're back with the New York Cycle Club monthly club meeting. Instead of getting together in person, which is something that may not happen for quite a while yet, we've been doing it via Zoom. And we've been giving the first 5 minutes over to people just sort of logging in. You see there's a couple more joining. And then we're going to start with Brendt. And I'll start right now and just say that I met Brendt a long time ago when I first got involved in litigation concerning group cycling, which was back in, I think it was 2005, maybe 2006, and it was following the police crackdown on a monthly group ride called Critical Mass, which is known to many of you and probably a bit controversial. But the police were harassing cyclists who met to ride leaderless, without fixed itinerary, through the streets of New York once a month under the name Critical Mass. Did I say criminal mass? And it really raised major constitutional issues from my perspective as a lawyer. And Brendt was one of the people who had been subject to harassment, selective enforcement, the use of undercover officers infiltrating bike organizations, and a lot of other dirty tricks, frankly, that the NYPD was employing at that time to try to police cyclists who they thought had left egg on the face of our mayor during the 2004 Republican National Convention. And Brendt introduced me to so many other people in the bike world and so many other aspects of the bike world that I never knew existed. I had a very narrow understanding of biking. Although I had been a commuter and transportation cyclist my whole life, until then, I had never understood just how diverse and how many options there are for cycling until I had met Brendt and seen what he had done with the Bicycle Film Festival, which he began in 2000, 20 years ago. It's really amazing. And I'm going to warn you right now, you're going to get exposed to certain biking practices, cultures, subcultures, whatever you want to call them, that may shock you or maybe new or surprising to you. But I think that if you can look past what's different about these other types of cycling that Brendt has promoted, represented through his Bicycle Film Festival over the years, I think you'll see fundamentally there's a real commonality in the love of the bike, and that there is a huge potential for us to be thinking ecumenically and not tribally about our love of the bike. And that's why I thought Brendt would be such an excellent guest for this webinar. And with that said, let's go. Your turn.
Thank you, Steve. Hi. I love the word ecunemic. Cool. Ecunemical. I could just tell you a little bit about how I started Bicycle Film Festival, a little bit about my bicycle history. I grew up in Northern California. I, like many people, started out with a BMX, and I really, really loved riding all the time. And is everyone still there? Because I'm not seeing Steve anymore.
Yep, I wanted to put the focus on you.
Okay, cool. So, and then I grew out of the BMX, and I have to say, honestly, breaking away had a big influence on me. I'm Italian American, and he was so much into his Italian culture, and he had his Mozzie frame, and so I had to have an Italian road bike. And in high school, I was one of the few people that knew that Greg LeMond won the Tour de France, and that was really exciting. So I love the sport of cycling as well. And then in San Francisco, one of my first places on my own, I had a roommate who was a bike messenger, and that really introduced me to a whole subculture of people that just loved riding all the time. And believe me, there wasn't a lot of people at that time in the early 90s that I knew were riding all the time. So that was a lot of fun. And then I moved to New York to pursue the arts in different forms. And I was moving along and, getting around by bicycle, and that's what I do. And I was doored into an oncoming bus. And so I, obviously went through this negative period, and I thought, well, let's do something fun and positive from the experience. I want to show people how beautiful cycling is. And so, we had this film festival, a bicycle film festival, and maybe some of you have been to it, but you'll see that, to be successful, we had to be inclusive. I think that's kind of something we've always talked about. And so inclusive maybe just meant we have BMX films, we have road cycling films, we have adventure films. Maybe we have films that have artistic merit, that bicycle just happens to be a part of the theme. We have art exhibitions, we have dinners, and a lot of community events at the festival. And so then we had I guess pretty successful. We sold out some shows. I was quite surprised here in New York the first year. And then since then, we've been around the world to 90 cities. And, from Moscow to Milan to Cape Town to Buenos Aires, Tokyo multiple times, Seoul, Korea, or Sydney, and of course, all around the United States. And this June was going to be our celebration of 20 years. And people had bought tickets from all around the world, and obviously we have to postpone that, or we haven't really even come up with the language yet. They're like, we canceled the physical show, so to be honest, we're not corporate, we're not coming up with some kind of tag like we canceled the thing, but we are still celebrating the 20th anniversary, and I can talk more about that, but I'm sure Steve has some questions for me now. So that's the best Bicycle Film Festival. I'll say one thing so you can be clear about it. So like if we were going to have the festival here this year, Tuesday night would have been a panel. Like last year we had Antonio Colombo and a number of folks brought their collector bikes out and celebrating Columbus tubing over 100 years. I mean, last year was the 100th anniversary. We're very honored to have the folks from Italy and talking about the impact on design. And actually, people don't know, like many of the Brewer chairs, the Met Brewer or the Whitney used to be at the Brewer building. So the Bauhaus movement was influenced by that. And of course, all the bikes in my favorite period of road cycling, the 70s. And then, so we'll have a panel discussion or women in cycling. And then on Wednesday night, we have been doing the last few years, we used to have a gala dinner, but we've opened up to the public. We've been having a big vegan barbecue, which has been a lot of fun. We've had like a couple thousand or 1,000 people out. And then on Thursday, we have an art exhibition opening. And we've been fortunate to have some of the most incredible artists from different backgrounds, from blue chip artists to bike messengers who've been taking photos for the last, 20 years or what have you. And then we have a concert series that we've been doing, and I've been really proud of, old classic cycling films with contemporary bands and mixing them with orchestra of classical musicians, usually strings and maybe a horn or two, in churches in Brooklyn. And we've been doing that around the world. We've had hosted in Sydney Opera House or at the Barbican in London, or maybe we've done stuff in a church or even a warehouse in Bushwick. And then obviously on the weekends, we have bike movies. And I've kind of given you a taste of that, like BMX films or the Urban Bike Program, or it's Bike Messengers, which, racing through red lights in the streets, or we'll have a movie about someone riding across America, or a really great road cycling film of the year, what have you, or cyclocross. So that's it. That's the festival.
So Brent, and since we agreed upon a more of an interview sort of format than we typically use in these types of meetings, I'm just going to ask you to talk a little bit more about one of those classic cycling films set to live music that we saw 2 years ago that was just so great, A Sunday in Hell, with Blonde Redhead performing. Can you tell me a little bit about that production? Just specifically describe the production, then also why in particular, your history with that particular piece of film.
Well, A Sunday in Hell, I felt made the Bicycle Film Festival. I mean, first off, A Sunday in Hell, just to let you know, I feel like a lot of people know about it. It's about the 1976 Paris-Roubaix. It's directed by Jørgen Leth, who's a legendary Danish experimental documentary filmmaker. He's impacted film all over Europe and around the world. Maybe if you saw Andy Warhol eating the hamburger at the Whitney last year at the show, that was Jørgen Leth, or at the Super Bowl, they used that for a commercial. But he's very well known in the art world, and we're very honored to have Sunday in Hell made by him. And he made 3 cycling films. Stars and Water Carriers, about, I believe it was in 1973, Giro d'Italia, and then also Ole Ritter trying to retake his crown after Eddie Merckx beat him in the 1-hour record in Mexico City. And then, of course, A Sunday in Hell in 1976. So Sunday in Hell, it's an amazing, incredible film. And Jørgen, the first year of the Bicycle Film Festival, called me up and thanked me for screening his film in New York City at Anthology Film Archives. He was very honored. And I was like, oh, excuse me, I'm very honored just to talk to you. And that was the beginning of kind of a friendship, mentorship. And we played that film on film, 35 millimeter, in many places around the world. And we had big packed houses of different types of cyclists going to appreciate this. Like again, like from Bike Messengers to, old road cycling fans to new road cycling fans. So that's been a big part of the film festival. And also art lovers, people who appreciate art and film, come out. Maybe they don't have interest in bikes at all, but they come to see this great film. And do you want to ask me more questions about Sunday in Hell? Oh, well, the relationship.
Yeah, I do. The thing about it that's so impressive to me is that it speaks to the experience you have as a road cyclist when you're out on maybe one of the most ambitious rides you've ever tried to do. And then maybe the weather is bad, the conditions are bad, and you're having a bad day. And you still just have to go on and you have to finish, right? Isn't that a little bit about what it's trying to speak to?
Well, I think he really tried to express the hell of the North in that film. I mean, that year, lucky for the camera people, the year of 1976, it was just dusty because it was dry and it hadn't been raining. But what was really unique about that film, I mean, first off, they had 25 cameras and they had access that you wouldn't have now, except for now you're starting to get these smaller cameras on the cyclists themselves, but they had access with motorcycles, helicopters, and that you would never have now. And it's and also that era of film is just so beautiful. And also you have like De Vlaminck, you have Francesco Moser, you have Eddie Merckx, like all trying to win. I don't remember if De Vlaminck was trying to win his, De Vlaminck and Eddie Merckx were trying to win their 4th Paris-Roubaix, and that's try to break the record. So it's pretty incredible to see. And I've watched it multiple times, obviously, and you don't even care who wins. You just like want to immerse yourself in this period, and like that's when every bike was handmade, and all the clothing, and it was many of which were made in Italy. So yeah, it's just a eye candy, more than eye candy. It's like the most beautiful meal. Oh, so what we did, we took, if you guys don't know Blonde Redhead, it's an incredible, they are a legendary New York band, classically trained at Berkeley, but also experimental in a way that they can create. So essentially they created an album we adapted the film with the Organ Left's permission. So we took 60 minutes of the film, and Harry Zernicke of 9W fame edited and worked on this with us. And we brought in Michael Leonard, who did some of the arrangements, and David Byrne needs somebody, Blonde Redhead needs somebody, Yoko Ono, and to bring in the classical musicians to their larger band, they go to him. And so we're very honored to have him and bring in some amazing strings and horns. And that to me is one of the most wonderful experiences at the Bicycle Film Festival, is working on that project.
Is there anywhere online or for pay people can go and actually be able to watch and listen to the performance of Blonde Redhead with that 60 minutes of A Sunday in Hell that you did in the church 2 years ago?
No, I mean, I don't know if we forfeited me trying to figure out how to share the screen, but there's like a clip of it, I think, on my personal Instagram. But like, we shot it, the lighting, we didn't have the budget, frankly, to have the proper lighting to be able to see the screen and light the musicians and the room at the same time. But we did shoot it just for documentation, but I didn't consider it something good enough to put up, but maybe someone would enjoy it, so maybe we did document it. So maybe we could release that on the Bicycle Film Festival YouTube now that we are doing more online programming. So
can you give us a couple more, one or two more highlights besides your original premiere production, and then your re-presentation of Sunday in Hell, highlights from the 20 or 19 years of the Bicycle Film Festival?
I first want to say that I'm very grateful to be able to do this for so many years. I've traveled about 7 months of the year for a good 15 years of the 20, going around the world and sharing passion with some amazing, incredible people. And I remember Tokyo. Tokyo really got into fixed gear bikes. And I remember Rafa, when Rafa first started, was starting to get big there. And a lot of people from the fixed gear culture were wearing Rafa. It was like just an interesting memory that just came to me, actually. I haven't thought about it in so long. Things can get really super hyped in Japan, and that was really exciting. I look back one thing we did was a party, and it just comes to mind. There's so many memories, but like, we had a party. It was the parking lot of the Bigarelli Velodrome, and we called the party Velodromo in Milan. And that was the biggest party we ever had. It was 7,000 people. And I just had my friend, it was just crazy. And it was just the parking lot. And we got the parking lot permission from the city, and we didn't have any famous DJs or anything. It was just such a cool idea, I think, that, we had the parking lot of the Velodrome. It wasn't even, I think it's just a public parking lot. I think everyone uses. I don't think it's just the Velodrome's parking lot, but that was pretty awesome, because we had the film screening, and then it had started snowing. It was in November, and it's usually a week, because my family's Italian, so we usually have the Bicycle Film Festival a week of Thanksgiving, and then I go or the week before Thanksgiving, and then I spend Thanksgiving, which doesn't exist in Italy, with my family there. So it was like November, and it was sleeting, snow, and wet, and we all rode there in a group, and we're super wet and went to this party. So that was a really good memory. I think I just look back of all the positive times, like standing in a room, seeing people and feeling people enjoy, seeing the bicycle put up on the big screen, seeing people cheer for the movies, just that camaraderie, looking outside, seeing all the bicycles parked out front and valet. There's an incredible amount of stories, but yeah, I look back at it very positively.
to obviously the best way to enjoy a bike is with your butt on it, but to those who can't see another way to enjoy it, I mean, what's your thinking about why a bicycle film festival, you know, inspiring, gathering, collecting, curating, presenting these films about bicycling is important for the world of bicycling?
Well, I think stories are important. I think people share stories and they can identify with certain stories. Also, I think that it's another medium of coming together where some people may not understand race culture or may not feel like they fit in. And also, we've been able to bring in different types of people to the festival. Like I said before, people may be just, if there's a certain film, like, you know, Spike Jonze, Academy Award winning filmmaker, has had 2 films at the Bicycle Film Festival. Maybe people came just for that. I know they have. Or for example, the art exhibitions that we have produced. We've had, you know, thousands of people show up to these art exhibitions. In June 2014, every weekend at the gallery was packed. So we had the Bicycle Film Festival up at the Marlborough Gallery for a month. And a lot of those people are art lovers, you know, because they like Francesco Clemente or Ai Weiwei or some of these other big name artists. So, or maybe they just love the bicycle. Like maybe like all of us, we would want to go see somebody's expression of what the bicycle means to them. So I think that's something that we work on here is like we try to think outside of just what people think of as a bicycle community, because we kind of get in our little bubbles. And I think it makes it a lot more fun, and it exercises. Like I was telling Steve right before this, the bicycle has opened me up. I was never really that social, you know, from high school to my I started this in my late 20s, but in my early 20s. So it really pushed me to meet new folks, and I just love it. There's just so many different types of people that come, and just seeing these different people together is a thrill for me, you know.
Speaking of art, I can't help but notice that there's a weird looking bicycle that's like up behind your head there. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
That was, you know, a friend of mine, I'll name drop, but a friend of mine, Andy Spade, if you know Kate Spade, had just sold his company and his fashion company called Kate Spade, his wife's name, Kate Spade, his late wife's name, Kate Spade. And he was looking for things to do. And he said, let's do an art show together. And so we did an art exhibition, and he hosted it in a building that he had on Great Jones Street. And one of my favorite artists in London, who just actually had an exhibition with Paul Smith at that time. And Paul Smith, the fashion designer, is a big cycling fan, and he's also done some collaborations with Rafa. And we had a budget, but we didn't have a big enough budget to ship that thing. So I was able, out of the generosity of some folks who had a big studio, you know, Benedict kindly came early and built that bicycle, and I bought that off him as a sculpture. It's a you know, real bicycle, but you can't ride it. Like all the cranks are real. I think they're campy. You know, it's like the Benotto frame set it. It's a frame, Benotto frame. It's not real. You know, it's just long tubes, steel tubes. I think. I don't think they're Reynolds or Columbus. I think they're Benedict Radcliffe tubes. So,
A nice conversation piece.
yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think a lot of people feel stuck in, some people are sick. I was sick for a long time. People are stuck in feeling not comfortable going out and riding in the current situation with the virus. Are there bicycling films that I don't want to say your top 5, because, you know, you work with so many film producers that, you know, you could never just say the top 5, but can you give us a safe 5 bicycling films that if people want to curl up with a nice bike film at home, they won't go wrong?
Yeah. First off, I'm going to say, just to share with everybody, I decided this first, you know, I was really privy to this COVID. It kind of slipped up on us, snuck up on us, but like I was in the drama a couple of weeks ahead of time because of speaking with friends and family in Italy before. And so I was on the phone every day in the mornings, like for hours, comforting.
Your family's in northern Italy.
Yeah, in Tuscany, Venice, and friends in Milan. Yeah, so yeah, so I was already kind of locking down, earlier, and also there was a couple people in my building, one who works in finance, someone came in sick on another floor, but they shut their whole floor down. So I started respecting and talking to them and respecting some of the people in my building. And so I didn't leave I went and bought a lot of food. I didn't buy a lot of toilet paper. I didn't hoard all that, but I didn't leave for 5 weeks. And then I rediscovered the bike, and I went out there and I was like, oh, okay. And I got really nervous. I was one of these people who took all my clothes off when I came back in from grocery shopping. And then that's what they were doing in Italy. People were putting their
TMI.
No, just like putting it in a plastic bag and taking a shower, like cleansing for many, so maybe that was a little much, but we didn't know. So I started riding a bike and I started feeling more comfortable out there. And I've noticed that most everybody's wearing a mask. And then I've talked to some people who are more riding, training and going over the bridge. And, they wear it up to the bridge or they take it off. And then when they see people, put it back on. And then I also, all of a sudden, living in Chelsea in Manhattan, these demonstrations are like right at my doorstep. So I started going out and I was quite impressed with, we sat down in the middle of 6th Avenue and it did 10 minutes of silence. I could not believe it. Thousands and thousands of people. It's nothing like I saw in the news, what have you. And I was really impressed with these young people standing up for their rights. And it was just amazing. And what's happened, and if you don't mind me going into this, what happened is that you can see a whole new movement. I grew up in San Francisco critical mass and seeing this whole urban bike culture grow. The 90s was a period, and then we had the early 2000s. And I would say New York was a major leader in seeing the Bicycle Film Festival relate to other cities, bringing the culture from here to other cities around, from Moscow or Zurich even, what have you. And then seeing like a whole new crowd. And what started happening was what people discussing with people who were buying bikes, they wanted to social distance, they didn't want to take a subway, and they were going to the demonstrations on bike. And then the bike protests became a thing. And
You're saying you've seen this happen over just the last few months?
6 weeks, really. Yeah. So in 6 weeks, I've seen thousands of people discover new bikes.
Do you have, and obviously you're no stranger to pre-production as well as post-production. So you have any images you want to show us of what you've seen out there?
Well, let's see if I can do the share. Hopefully I can pull that up. I think you disabled it, maybe?
No, you should have it, right?
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, then. Try it now.
Okay, so this maybe you guys seen it. Just to do a plug, we're doing more social media now, and it's never been a priority. But so we're doing some programming. Please check it out. We're gonna get more and more into it. I'll tell you at the Steve, remind me, please give me some time to what's moving forward with the bicycle.
Yeah, actually, there's a Q&A function on Zoom. I forgot to introduce it at the top, but some of you who've been participating in these Zoom webinars know there's a question about accessing your content virtually, okay, even if the festival can't be in person. We're going to get to that in the Q&A.
Okay, great. So this actually is, I'm going to show you one of the demonstrations that started, and I got to know these kids. A lot of folks reached out to us. I think they see and understand that we would be open to them. They heard about Bicycle Film Festival. They reached out to us. And so we showed up to this one just with our phone cameras and documenting it. I did a live thing. This is a thing called Street Riders. I got to know a lot of these folks, and now they've formed actual organizations. It's almost like seeing San Francisco Bicycle Coalition or different cycling clubs at their nascent point. These kids are like 21 years old, 19, and they're out there every single day. They're so excited about cycling, and they're using, and also a lot of people of color, and they have something to say, and they're using the bicycle as an expression. This ride I'm going to show you had probably about 15,000 people. if they got onto the police scanners and they heard the police say they're at 42nd Street and the ride goes all the way down the West Side Highway to Battery Park. That's how long it was at one time, taking up full lanes on one side of the West Side Highway. And let me tell you, a lot of people say, oh, well, if you're not supportive of that, that's your own thing. But I say it's really positive. Many of the car drivers who, there's a couple of folks that are not happy with it. There was someone yelling, all lives matter, blah, blah, blah. But the vast majority of people I've never seen, I've been on a lot of demonstrations. People are honking, putting their fists up out the cars. I've never seen something so positive. And I went to the Iraq war demonstrations in the early 2000s in the Upper East Side when it was freezing cold. I've been to the Women's March, and this is the most positive thing I've ever seen. It's amazing. And most of these people are under 25 years old. So we have a new bike movement happening. So I'm going to play the video. It's like 15 seconds, but this is outside of one of our volunteers' girlfriends' place on 3rd Avenue and 110th on the 10th floor or something like that.
And it looks like everybody's pretty much 6 feet away from each other, right?
Yeah, you get some space.
Because they've got the whole street. There's no need to go cramped up in a tiny greenway or bike lane, right?
All right, that's good enough. So I could say that that would go for about 30 minutes, I think. You would be sitting there watching that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But regarding social distancing, look, nor Steve or I or our doctors or scientists, but I can say that I am pretty cautious, but I'm very cautious, I think, just looking and talking to people. But I think that we would see a spike by now with the protesters, with the cyclists. There are so many, like Steve and I met last night and we rode up the West Side Highway. There were so many cyclists out, you know, so I think that that's probably the normal right now. Like I've never seen so many people so many cyclists on the West Side Highway. And I think that I've been experiencing that for like at least a month, so many cyclists out. I think we would already see a spike. Look, I totally respect people's boundaries, but I feel that it's one thing that we can do if this is going to last a year. One thing we can do to socialize is ride together. You know, I think it's a little bit risky for me to suggest something as a non-scientist what to do, but I don't hear anybody saying don't go outside and don't ride. I think it's when you're in confined spaces or next to each other for extended period of time. So that's what I'm going to say about that. Steve, if you want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just say I was today's webinar started with the idea that I would put on an epidemiologist or microbiologist or someone else who had expertise with respect to virus transmission, an MD, because a lot of them have written, and I couldn't find any empirical evidence to show that there can be transmission between people on bikes moving. Forget whether or not they're wearing masks. I have not seen a single documented case reported in the medical literature, and I litigate medical issues. I cross-examine doctors as a lawyer. I'm not a doctor myself, but I'm used to putting doctors' findings under a microscope. I couldn't find a doctor who would come here and make those statements to our bike club, but I don't know of any empirical evidence to suggest that people can get COVID from riding together. And I know just anecdotally, people are doing it, as you say, on the bike path on the West Side. I'm there every day. The volumes are double what I'm used to seeing, and I've been commuting there for years. I know a lot of members of the New York Cycle Club have been riding in groups even before the club officially sanctioned rides. And we haven't heard that people have been getting sick. I'm not presenting the official position of the club. This is just my point of view. But there is something that I wanted to show that I thought was interesting, because, hold on one second. Let me just get out of that. You know, can you stop sharing the screen, Brent?
Stop share.
Yeah, I just want to go here, and then I'll go here. And then this is very interesting. This is a friend of mine. I was in their, okay. I was in their elevator of their building, and I was reading what was there posted in the elevator, and it was a New York City Department of Health bulletin that they had put in from early March. And here's the guidance that we were getting in the second week of March from the New York City Department of Health.
Oh, wow. I remember that.
So, like, there's definitely cities that have been shutting down major events and saying we can't have these big events. But I don't know of any city that's shutting down group bicycle rides. I don't know if a group bicycle ride necessarily qualifies as a mass event unless people are congregating at rest stops or the start or the finish, which isn't a necessary concomitant of a group bicycle ride, and it's something the club is exploring. But even if they were, can we really depend on what governments are doing about canceling mass events when this is the guidance we were getting from our government just a few short months ago, and we know how wrong it was? Anyway.
Something to mention about the protests, that there is like every single person is wearing a mask. Every single, out of the thousands. Some people bring them down for a second because it really is hot, you know. But like, for example, I was on one of the bike protests and my mask broke, which also it brought a whole new subject. I need to be carrying a backup mask, you know, and so my mask broke and I was able to fix it, but I was thinking, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to leave. That was the first immediate thing. I had to go to the side of the road, and if I didn't fix the mask and I didn't have a mask, I had to leave. So people are really respecting this space. You know, to be fair, like, you have to kind of create space for yourself that you determine that you need. You know, but the bike the bike creates space, you know, in itself, more than, like, say, if you wanted to, you know, participate in a march, you know, you may find yourself closer, but a bike, you know, people can't really bump into you with the bike.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, that's enough for me on that subject, I think.
All right. So just before we head in towards the Q&A, I had a couple last questions. One is just turning back to some bike films, some favorites of yours that people can curl up with.
Well, okay, so obviously A Sunday in Hell, if you haven't seen that, that's great. Or even all the Jorgen Leth films. Stars and Water Carriers, where, you know, I love that film. Like,
what is it? What is it?
Stars and Water, okay, so where Sunday in Hell had 25 cameras, Stars and Water Carriers had one camera over the Giro d'Italia at different stages. And Eddie Merckx just drops everybody in the mountains. It's really beautiful. And it's shot on 16 millimeter. It's just it's a poem. The film is a poem, you know? And so I recommend, those are Jorgen Leth films. And a more art film that you could just sit back and kind of like enjoy, you know, a nice glass of wine and just kind of, you know, just relax to, is maybe the Impossible Hour, about Ole Ritter in Mexico City, way up in elevation, trying to beat Eddie Merckx's record that Eddie Merckx had beat Ole Ritter's hour record. And those are the Jorgen Leth, you know, the trio of Jorgen Leth films. And then, you know, like, I think I always try to stay away from my favorite films because I love all films because it's a very community-oriented thing. And also, like, I just can't think of any, like, I just don't think that way. Like, what's my favorite, what's great. But I do think last year we screened for road cycling, one of the best films since that era, I would say. And again, it has like artistic merit and it can be experimental, but it was Time Trial. It's by a Scottish filmmaker, Finlay Pretzel. That film in the film world did very well. It played at some of the most important film festivals around the world, and Jorgen Leth endorsed that film and came actually out to different cities. And really, Jorgen Leth, the director of A Sunday in Hell, came out and supported Finlay with this, as Jorgen is. Jorgen's very supportive, and came out some of those film festivals as an 85-year-old man, and did some Q&As talking about film and cycling. So yeah, Time Trial is a great film. David Millar's, coming out. He got caught doping, and it's his reckoning of that. And some of the footage I have never seen. They have sound within the peloton, which is incredible. You can see and hear these folks in a different way. People giving David Millar a hard time. It's amazing. Like playing kind of mind games with each other. You can hear the conversations. I've never heard. I don't know how he got permission or how he pulled it off. It's pretty incredible. So Time Trial. We had that play at the festival last year. One film that is very, I don't know. It's amazing. If you guys are Bartoli's, Gino Bartoli fans, and 1938 he won the Tour de France, right? Then there was the war, and he was a war hero. He saved so many Jewish folks. I don't know if you guys know that. That deserves to be a movie in itself. So like he used to put documents in his tubes and go, you would ride long distance. It'd be like Michael Jordan. The Nazi guys knew who he was. So he would say, I'm just training, I'm just riding. And he was going to this convent in Umbria from Tuscany. He's from outside of Florence. And he would go there, put documents in his tubings to, give people fake documents to get out of the country. And he'd give the Jewish folks these documents. And he did this all the time, going back and forth. And he's such a courageous, heroic guy. And so he missed all those years of the Tour de France because of the war. But in 1948, he came back, and he was about, 15 minutes behind. As you know, that's like he's lost already. And so there was going to be a civil war in Italy. The communists were rising up. Russia was supporting the United States, was on the other side. They have a prime minister, but the president, I believe, was assassinated. And they came to him, said, Bartoli, you have to win and save Italy. And that was a time before television. And so everyone used to stand in the piazza listening to the radio. And so that brought them together. And how can you get in a fight if you're listening to Tour de France for 4 or 5 hours every day? And so it really brought everyone back together. And 10 years after that 1938 win, he came back and won and saved Italy. 1948 winner. And that's what's called Tour de Legends, Tour de Legende. It's a Dutch production, co-production of French, and they went back and found like these glass images and recreated some of the scenes. It's an incredibly beautiful film and very touching that we played at the festival a number of years ago, maybe 2004. A short film that is a favorite of Mandy Weiss, who works here, and has sent the success of this short film, The Climb, got them funding to make a feature-length film, which won a jury prize at Cannes Film Festival last year. It's not totally a bicycle film, but I think you would be well, The Climb, the short film, is absolutely a bicycle film that played at the Bicycle Film Festival. The Climb, the feature-length film, is just a charming story of two friends who are cyclists. And they don't always get along. They fall in love with each other's girlfriends or wives, and that's all I'm gonna say. So The Climb, it's really great. I don't know if it's going to be available yet. It was supposed to be released in March, but we've seen it, so find a way to see it. It's also being released in Europe at this point, so maybe they'll be releasing online. If you grew up a BMX kid like I did, you have to appreciate what Matt Hoffman has done. Matt Hoffman, BMX cycling has such an influence on different cultures. And BMX had a big influence in creating the X Games. Like it or not, this story is an amazing story of a man who was going to jump higher than anybody else. Like Evel Knievel was his mentor, and Matt Hoffman, jumped the highest of anybody at that time and broke a lot of bones doing it. It's just a young kid, I'm fortunate to be friends with him, one of the nicest, warmest, humble people ever. And a good friend, a mutual friend, Spike Jonze, who made Her adaptation with Meryl Streep, who's an Academy Award-winning filmmaker, produced this film amongst a bunch of friends. Also Fugazi, if you remember that band, one of the most legendary bands of the 90s, never allowed anybody to use their music, but they love Matt Hoffman so much that they let the music play on this film. And that was a real big honor, actually, if you're talking about memories, in Washington, D.C., having Fugazi attend the festival and having the Q&A with them, talking about Matt Hoffman in that film. So that's a great Birth of Big Hair. Also, there's more on the art level, but again, shot on Super 8, and this kind of launched the career of Daniel Densick. It was a film called Moonrider about a very talented time trialist going for the world championship. And I could go on and on and on, but yeah, that's, I think, a good taste. Maybe in the Q&A, if you missed the title, I'm happy. Yeah, so that's it.
Okay, great. Listen, I have a last question for you. You had talked about the experience of trying to get out and start cycling again while we're facing the pandemic and the possibility of a resurgence here in New York after we've managed it so well. You know, it's obviously it's a challenge for you, and one of the questions that we'll get to, I don't want you to address this now, the idea of how does the festival continue in a place where people can't sit crowded in at Anthology. But what I do want to ask you is, what, along with the challenges, what opportunities do you see that have been brought by the pandemic and everything that's happened during the pandemic, the racial injustice demonstrations? What does this mean for cycling, and how do you view it in the context of the bike culture, which has really been the focus of your work, representing the bike culture? What's happening at this moment now that is unique or different than what's happened before? And then we'll go to Q&A.
We're going to see a whole new leadership in cycling as groups come together. There are a number, I can think of 10 groups of people just, for example, MBR, Mind Body Results. They're young Black men who started a group of people who just got into cycling in March, and they were Division I basketball players, and they discovered cycling somehow and decided that they were going to get in shape through cycling. And I guess all the hoops were taken down, all the parks, what have you. And so they got into cycling to stay in shape, and then the protest happened. And I'm
not just gonna jump in. We met with someone from MBR, one of their leaders, last night, right?
Yeah.
And he told me that after starting cycling in March, that just this last week, he did a round trip to Montauk from the city, 260 miles.
Yeah, so there's a whole new group of folks who, and they've organized, I think they have planned to organize, I think 20 rides for this month. So they're a whole new cycling club, you know, like and they're not stopping. It's great. I said, isn't that a lot? You know, don't you want a lot of people? They're having rides with 1,000 people. They're having rides with 30 people. They're doing early morning rides, evening rides, and they're also already now having come get your bike clean day. So they're moving on. Also, they want to get, I told them there's already Bike New York. They want people to raise money to give bikes to less, you know, disadvantaged youth, you know? And I was like, well, there's already a group doing that. So we're going to start seeing new leadership. And one of the things I wanted to do with Steve was like, reach out to these different new groups and let them know, hey, let's work together. You know, I just want to let you know, do your thing, but I just want to let you know, these are the things that have happened. These are the people that have been working hard. These are the organizations that are around, and, you know, we'll just see. And I think it's super positive. By the way, MBR, they wanted to be more of like a business. And then the protests happened. Now they're going to be having a protest once a week that meets at Grand Army Plaza for Black Lives Matter. So they're doing these training rides. They're going to Montauk. They went to Palisades this last Sunday. He was telling me, like, you know, those hills, you know, kicked his butt. And, you know, now they're doing also these protest rides. And then
what about the ride to DC we heard about last night?
Oh, there's a young woman. She's a school teacher. She's, you know, a refugee with her family from the war in Ethiopia. They had to leave. Her father's an academic. He's a professor. I can't remember what school. And they moved to Michigan. Her father really encouraged cycling in their family, really got more into cycling in college. She was an athlete. And then she also got into Black Lives Matter in the early years of Black Lives Matter, and then moved to New York and became a school teacher here. And then when this all happened, she came up with the idea, why don't I organize a ride to DC and arrive on August 28th for the anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech. So I've helped her a little bit with Bicycle Film Festival. We promoted through our social medias. I'm helping her consult a little bit how to organize and so on. But she has her own energy. She has I can't remember, like 25, 50 person team already. It reminds me a lot of ACT UP, like when the AIDS and gay movement came together in the late 80s. Like this is incredible. Like they have a lot of professional people. They have everything's organized by departments. And they already have 400 people signing up to go on this ride to DC. So they're stopping in Philadelphia, then Baltimore, and then going to DC.
All right. So, Brent, I'm going to go to the Q&A. And the first question is only half serious, but I have to admit, it's a question I've had myself. Why were the Cinzano team the bad guys?
Well, but they were super mean to him, don't you think? I can't believe he looked up to
I thought you told me if Italian cyclists are out there, saving the Jews from the Nazis during World War II, how could they do that?
I know. They kind of changed since, Bartoli days. Oh my God, that was heartbreaking. Did you notice, if I remember correctly, at the end he was speaking French? Remember, he was speaking French, and he had at the end he was speaking French. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Yeah. So
okay.
You remember that frame? That one is just a Bicycle Film Festival story. That frame was built by Alberto Mazzi. And our first Bicycle Film Festival, we had a street race. Like we brought these alley cats. But the street race there, roadies would appreciate. It wasn't really a street race. They rode outside the city a number of miles or kilometers and then rode back in. So it wasn't really a Lucas Fresnel racing through the streets. But Alberto, he made a bike for the prize, the first prize winner. So we had the Mazzi breaking away frame builder making him up for the Bicycle Film Festival. It was a big honor.
Okay. And speaking of breaking away, our club's president, Peter Story, has a question. He says 50 years ago, he got his first 10 speed and he saw breaking away. Was it really as good as he remembers? He's never seen it since.
Yeah, I won not that winning an Oscar makes something great, but really the story. It won the best Oscar for Yates, won a best Oscar. The director won an Oscar for best screenplay. And I was honored to meet, because we did the 30th anniversary, his family. He had passed and his family came out to the screening. And that movie really meant a lot to him. And if you think about storytelling, this is a coming of age story, but it's also about class. They're from working class. His father worked in the quarry and then became an entrepreneur by owning, because the union jobs were done. And so he had to start a used car lot. And think of the antithesis of a cyclist is, your parents are car dealers, so it's a really well written, and also opera, just like he's singing an opera the whole time. You remember that? And then his father not being into ID food, he would call it ID food, mom is romanticized by her son's dream of Italy, she got carried away. So it's and then the romance part, it has everything, in a classic story, and it has a Hollywood touch to it that usually I don't like, but I can accept it for that film.
But then the ultimate, where they strap his feet using surgical tape onto the pedals.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Bloomington, Indiana. Yeah.
Another question is, are you considering broadcasting online a 2020 Bicycle Film Festival for your 20th anniversary as a way for people to be able to see it? It's suggested many festivals are letting people pay and watch it online. Is that something you've considered?
This has been really tough. Just try to keep it short, but it's always a grassroots effort. At one time, at our strongest financial time, we had 10 employees here, an office in Milan, Mexico City, and London. And Tokyo, we were using an office there, but people were part-time. And we were in 40 cities and raising a lot of money. But that was at our strength, and money has been a little bit more challenging, and cities have become more expensive to operate. But one thing I was really stubborn about was doing online. So really, we have to do it now. and it's been kind of fun. We've been doing some more programming we're practicing, but we are thinking to do, we haven't decided yet, but we've been talking to old teammates all around the world, in Brazil and all around the world. We're talking about doing one weekend, you pay a pass, and one weekend, all time zones. So English speaking, and then specialized for different countries. Like a lot of countries, a lot of younger people speak English. So one English speaking, 72 hours of films, and you can tune in, and we'll double up on ops zones like Eastern Standard Time. You'll have an opportunity to see things throughout, waking hours. And, you pay your fee and you watch the movies all that weekend. That's our 20th anniversary. And I hope people would want to do that, want to pay to go see that. And that's a way that we can make money, honestly, because we don't have any income. This is how we've made our living. And I think it could serve a lot more. We're thinking we could get a lot more people coming out to bat than any year of the festival. Our peak years, we had 200,000 people attending. But that's not the movies. The movies were always a little bit smaller, even though we had 500 people or 200 people per screening. The art exhibitions would draw more people because it's free and you could come to see that for 15 minutes, you can leave. But this is an opportunity to reach a lot of people. So yes, we are thinking about it. Another thing we've thought about is releasing a film a week. We don't have a big, we only have like 40,000 followers on Instagram and 80,000 on Facebook. So we have to grow that gradually. And by the time we're thinking about doing it the first weekend of December, or even.
What are your Instagram and Facebook handles so people can note them?
Bicycle Film Festival, all one word for Instagram and for Facebook. And then Twitter is BFF World.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and of course, for many years, our law firm has, been a sponsor of the Bicycle Film Festival, and we've always given out tickets. So if you do it virtually again this year, we'll have an opportunity to do the same thing and try to give people a chance to get exposed to all the great films that you receive each year.
Yeah.
There's another question, and then I wanted to follow up with one. The question is, what's the name of the film about the Italian who won in '48?
Tour de Legend. Legend.
Mm-hmm.
Legend. Tour
Okay.
of Legend. Tour of Legend.
And
But you might have to find it with its French word. Tour, D-E-S, Legend. It's legend with E-S at the end. So, but there is English subtitles. So.
okay. And I guess the last thing I'll just ask to finish up, we had, and now I remember the name of the fourth speaker that we had back in April that I couldn't remember at the top of our webinar. His name was Peter Flax. Peter Flax wrote an article about Robin Heitman. Robin Heitman was a volunteer at the Bicycle Film Festival, as well as many other things, of course. And then he wrote an article about her and her life and what cycling and racing meant for her. And then after we at Vaccaro and White were able to get the investigative file from the police, he did a follow-up report to try to set the record straight about how she died. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bicycle Film Festival, the volunteer aspect of it, and what it's meant as a community, and maybe a few words about Robin.
I mean, the bicycle, obviously, from the biggest film festivals in the world, like Sundance Film Festival, you need support from community, no matter what. And we've had, we wouldn't exist. I mean, I never put my finger on the map and said, let's go to Munich, let's go to Stockholm. And of course, I think of, it'd be cool to go there. I would love actually to go to Nigeria. But we have requests every single day to go where, now it's slowed down, obviously, but to go to wherever it was, and many small towns even. We've been to Billings, Montana, so that we vet these folks, understand where they're coming from. Are they able to, produce something? Many like ad agencies or cultural institutions, or even like bike messenger companies have hosted it, or brands like Freetag in Zurich hosted it and did an amazing job. So along with all that are people who just want this to happen and bring people together. And so there's a community, and there is a former employees and former volunteers, these people are friends for life. Jen Whalen, who's now a producer at Warner Brothers, she became this California state champion. We just posted an ad. She's in the latest Rafa ad. So we were very proud of posting that. And she comes and visits in New York. I get to see her, but she's off hanging out with all her other BFF friends as well. You know, so people that she's staying in touch with because they all met at the Bicycle Film Festival. And that to me is really wonderful to see the community come out. And it's very much similar how Robin became experienced with the festival. Matt Siegel is a New Yorker who had moved to Richmond, Virginia for a different life, for a job. And he's very involved in the bicycle community there. And he also produced the Bicycle Film Festival there for a number of years. And he met Robin, and Robin was very interested in the arts. She wanted to teach young people art and film and just all the different mediums of arts and get them engaged in storytelling. And so she wanted to immerse herself in this. By the way, I'm sorry that people call her they and them. I noticed that even Peter Flaxson is. I never experienced that with her, so that just came out after she passed. But she came up to the festival. Like Matt sent her up, and she volunteered. I have to say, she was one of the best volunteers, willing to do everything, big smile. And actually, Clark, you know,
Clark who?
your son, Clark, who also is a volunteer at the Bicycle Film Festival, they became very close that first year. And just to show you how much of a community it is, your son is a volunteer at the Bicycle Film Festival. And they, you know, he's probably not going to be hanging out with me now that I'm, obviously, you can guess how old I am, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So he's pretty young. So they have more in common. And, you know, it's just, I think she met a lot of folks and then started coming up to New York to race at Kissena and other races that I'm not even aware of. And then she just moved here. She came up for Bicycle Film Festival and decided that she was going to stay after Bicycle Film Festival and got a job, and was, I think, killed on the first or second day of that job. You know, so, you know, that's, I don't want the bicycle community to be something that comes together just because someone was killed or just because there's a protest. I would like to move forward. I mean, and I think that we can, but it's a real powerful thing that we do come together for these things and able to come together for these rides. I mean, in LA, they've had the Ride of Silence in some other cities as well, which are pretty incredible to just see 1,000 people riding on, you know, PCH on Highway 1, single file and silence for miles, you know. So like, what other culture is like that? We have something really special, you know.
Thanks a lot, Brent. We've already gone past the allotted hour, but I can tell from the questions we've received that the thing that you've spoken to that people are most interested in, that they love the most, is when you talk about films about bikes that you've loved and enjoyed and titles of films that they can look at. So I'm going to give you the floor for as long as you want to go to name a few other films that you think people should take a look at.
Well, one thing is tough because I've spoken in front of people all around the world. In fact, I still get nervous. When I first started the Bicycle Film Festival, I was really stage fright. But I would say it's hard to see who I'm talking to. But one thing that comes to mind that I really loved was Riding the Long White Cloud. These were a bunch of professional skateboarders who, some had been a little more experienced at riding and some had never ridden. And they rode around New Zealand. And the quirky part, they showed how quirky nature can be, and they looked for skateboard spots. So it's a skateboard film and a bike movie, but really it's a bike movie. And a lot of those people came to the Bicycle Film Festival and had expressed that they were now, you know, they came and parked their bike. They really got into biking. And the music in that film is so beautiful. It's a Canadian production. The crew from that film, the production crew and the directors have gone on. They got $1 million budget to make a skateboard film after that, and now they've done a lot of other films and television. They have an ongoing show on Vice, you know. So that's one movie that comes to mind.
And the name of that one again?
Riding the Long White Cloud.
Okay, great.
Um, you know, I would to say, I'm not trying to hold back, but it's weird how my mind is going blank. But I would say that there is the interest, and we need to we just put up a film, you know, Locust within some crowds is quite infamous or controversial. But one thing about Lucas Burnell, who does the alley cat footage and very irreverent and just kind of says whatever he wants. And I'm always scared to associate with him because the cancel culture, you know, but I do love him. One thing that Lucas does do well, he does adventure really well. And we posted a film on our Instagram today. It's just 15 minutes long of him going through the Everglades. And they ended up in this marsh in the middle of the night, walking knee deep on their bikes. And it's really amazing. And they came across these people looking for pythons. And he just does adventure really, really, really well. So that's a film that we just put up today, and we're experimenting with that because that's not something we've done. You know, I have this old style of thinking. The film should be seen on the big screen. And also, by the way, that Lucas Burnell is not really, he's perfect for social media. You know, it's a video, it's a clip, it's not film, you know? So, yeah, that's you know, another film, there's a film that, you know, I think it just documents Francesco Moser. I wouldn't say it's the most brilliant film. I can't put it against A Sunday in Hell. It's not, it doesn't touch A Sunday in Hell. But, you know, Moser, Dare to Win is, if you're into, I'm assuming a lot of people are into road cycling here. So I love Francesco Moser. And so there's some candid moments there. You can see the history. He also has a winery now. And also look out for our local hero, Harry Zernicke, who's made a film called, it's a short called Thursday Fields, which he released on Vimeo recently. So look for Thursday Fields. You know, the race is out at Floyd Bennett Field. It's a really charming, really great way of showing like what's happening there. And that's very unique to New York. And when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, our community has something really special. It's quite diverse. I've only seen maybe 3 communities that diverse. I mean, Italy and Japan have monocultures, but I've seen Miami is very Latino, the road cycling. We did a criterium, a midnight criterium for the Bicycle Film Festival in Miami because road cycling's so big there. And I'd said the predominant language was Spanish. So it was pretty amazing. A lot of Cuban and Puerto Ricans. It was a lot of fun. So we have that special thing here too, is that you see a lot of different folks. And then Los Angeles, I feel like coming on strong. We have, you know, our national champion, Justin Williams, who's been working really hard in the Baharati, I think is his last name. I don't know him personally, but like he's been working really hard about getting the Black community into cycling. And so, yeah, I think that Thursday Fields really touched. I kind of went on a tangent there, but because of Black Lives Matter, I felt like it was kind of interesting to point out. There's,
you know, you're not mistaken that road cycling is very popular with New York Cycle Club. So you could go a little bit deeper down in terms of talking about films that specifically are about road cycling that you've presented at the film festival over the years that people might be interested in.
Yeah, you know, one thing I'm doing, I'm because my brain is, I feel like oh my gosh, my brain is like freezing a little bit, but like I would say I'm going, while I'm talking to you guys, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, I'm looking at our Instagram and just seeing what films are on there. And that's how I came across the Moser to remember, and Harry I should remember because he's part of the BFF family. One film that's really old that it's Where You Go. And it's about going from a bunch of folks going, it's Tour de Afrique, it's an organization, and it's done by Brian Werner and Benny Zenga. Brian Werner, I would say Brian Werner and Ben Ingham created the brand really through their films, the look of their films for Rafa at the beginning. And so Brian Werner and Benny Zenga, who are part of the Bicycle Film Festival family, have a number of films at the festival, made a film about them. It's a different era. They went through Sudan. There's like amazing wrestling, like a traditional wrestling match out in the middle of a field with a crowd all around them. And they just went from, you know, Egypt all the way down to Cape Town. So it's that, I think that stands up. I think it's really beautiful. meandering, going through Africa. Excellent music, mostly African music. There's a short called King of the Mountain that I think is online. Actually, the director won an Oscar for The White Helmets. It's a Syrian film about the Syrian War, The White Helmets, if you heard of that. That's a short about the Rwandan cycling, a person in the Rwandan cycling team who had experienced genocide in his family. So another great film, not a road cycling film, and barely becomes a bike movie, but we had to show it. Bill Cunningham, New York. Bill Cunningham. You remember that?
I remember Bill Cunningham. I'd run into him all the time cycling in New York, and the guy was like, I'm sorry, like you're supposed to show respect to the dead, but the guy was like a total dick. If you ever ran into him on the street, he'd be riding counterflow during rush hour on Fifth Avenue, riding uptown, and he comes straight at you and he'd curse you out, if you didn't move the right way.
Well, I mean, he was probably in his 80s and he needed you to get out of the way. So, and he's known those streets a lot longer than you. He looks at you like some young kid. Get out of my way. I don't know. I had good experiences with him, but I can imagine him being a taker. He had a certain, what's amazing is he's so stubborn that like he had these codes. Check out the movie. This guy, old man who wore, his outfit was the sanitation department of Paris's outfit. That's what he would wear, and he became one of the most influential people in fashion. And he's not even into fashion. He lived above Carnegie Hall. Just a character. It's like a New York past history. I mean, back when he lived in Midtown, when Midtown was like the cool place to live for artists and filmmakers, and it's just amazing character. And I was always excited to see him. He didn't come to the festival. You had to send him a letter and invite him to get a hold of him. That's the way. And then he had someone at the New York Times would vet his letters. So there's no way to get a hold of him.
Except like riding through Midtown every day, in which case you'd encounter him constantly.
If you guys have families, and seeing a woman's perspective, I wouldn't say this movie really captures how the internet could work. This is Mandy's still working. Grateful Mandy to come here. We were isolating together. Mandy comes into work here at my apartment. Mandy, what's the director's name? I've known her for years, but I'm going to blank. Liz Canning directed this, and what she did was
spell her name.
Liz Canning, Canning. Liz as in Elizabeth. Canning did a movie called Motherlode. It's interesting because it's another movement within cycling that honestly I wasn't totally aware of, and the internet can create this. She outsourced her movie. She said, hey, housewives, wherever, or working mothers, wherever you live, suburban Indiana, upstate New York, what have you, and she's from Marin County, a racer who felt like she missed cycling and had kids and lives in Fairfax, the birthplace of mountain biking, and said, I'm going to get back on that bike, and started riding a utility bike with her kids in it. And people cussed her out, and she wanted to see what other folks' experiences it were. And so the movie is basically a collage of women's stories made by Liz Canning. These people did not know. They made the decision on their own. They didn't know that there was a New York Cycling Club. They didn't know there was a bicycle film festival. They didn't know there was a bike movement. They just got tired of driving their SUV and not seeing their kids. They knew that they were spending 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day running errands and taking them to school. So they got them on bikes again. And they oftentimes put them in their bikes by having these utility bikes. So a really amazing project that she put together. And we had that last year at the festival. So Mandy wanted me to bring that up. There's a charming documentary when we were talking about women again. There was a woman from Ghana who had immigrated to Amsterdam as someone looking for a new life. And she started a program. She noticed a lot of women from immigrant groups, refugees coming in from, the Middle East, Syria, wherever else, especially the Middle East, that never learned to ride a bike. And you know, in Amsterdam, if you don't know how to ride a bike, it's kind of like not having a driver's license in middle America. So she started a program teaching them how to ride bikes. This woman's enthusiasm for cycling is so wonderful. And she's such a character, such a character. So that movie, and I was very honored.
What's the name of that one?
Yeah, that movie's called, and I was going to say, I'm very honored to have met her, Mama Agata. So that's Mama, M-A-M-A, Mama Agata, like Agatha, A-G-A-T-H-A. And I believe that's available online. So I think that's enough. I'll come to the Bicycle Film Festival online. The best way to find out is to follow us on those social medias. I promise we're a lot more active on it. Yeah, Mama Agata is teaching women, adult women, how to ride bikes. And she is so energetic, so enthusiastic, and the joy people have. And there's a lot of funny moments, honestly. There's so many funny moments in that film. That movie's a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks so much, Brent, for spending this time with us. We went way over, but the number of participants grew after
The
8.
word got out. 2 more people showed up.
I figure we should keep going, you know, and, you know, I know we just touched the tip of the iceberg of all of the amazing films that you have put out there through the Bicycle Film Festival, and you're always getting more. Your inbox is full, right, of all of these great films that people are making about biking. And we're going to be watching you and seeing how, with COVID, you're going to be getting those out there to us. And we're so excited to see what you have to show us. So thanks.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I can maybe come back and when we're closer to let you know what we have in store. So.
Good. Take care.
Thank you.